Okay, so let's talk a bit more about that family stuff then. You had 3 kids in the early 70s, 71, 72, and 73.
Mm-hmm.
So you were very busy.
Tough times. I couldn't believe it. I lay in bed one night and I went, I'm having a third child. 3 9s are 27. This couldn't be. I'm having 3 children in 2 years. Oh, 3 9s are 27. Yes, 9 3s are 27. Eventually, I discovered you don't count the first 9 months. You just count from after that. So there were 3 children in 25 months, and you were the third one. There was Cormac born in 71, Suzanne 72, and you in 73.
And how old are you by the time I came along?
Well, I was 25 when Cormac was born, so I was 27 when you were born.
So still in your 20s with 3 young kids?
Aye, well, that wasn't unusual. People got married earlier. People didn't have to wait until, they had degrees and their education and everything. And we were lucky again that Brent was a bit older than me, established as a dentist, had a bit of money about, and we were able to get our own house in Glencoe Park. And it was beautiful up there, up in the hills overlooking Belfast. And you were a nice cul-de-sac for you to play in, quiet. And then Cushendall was a cul-de-sac too, so you were able to learn to ride your bicycles there, learn to swim. I took you swimming to the Queen's swimming pool once a week on a Thursday. So I had 2 children in armbands blowing up, and then a baby to look after. And then the baby needed his nappy changed. That was you. And I had to say to somebody else, would you look after those 2 children of mine while I go and change his nappy? And then get the 3 of you changed out of your togs. And you were going, oh, mommy, I'm cold. And mommy, So, but it was lucky that you got all those advantages in life, I think.
But what was it like for you?
Exhausting. I remember saying, I'm exhausted having these children. And somebody said, oh, but sure, they'll be great friends for each other when they grow up. I said, I'll be in the nut house when they grow up. I'll never live through all this. But you do, and you get on with it. And then I had 2 miscarriages after you. Brenton then was the captain of the golf club in Cushendall, and I was moving furniture and making food. And, that was very busy time. I think maybe it was a moving furniture. I don't know. That was one of them in 75, and then another miscarriage in 77. And then, oh joy, a boy, Mark, in 79.
And then finally?
And then 6 years later, an amazing thing happened. I had to tell Brenton that I was pregnant. And he said, well, that's that doctor's fault. That's Pat McGugh's fault. That's that gynecologist's fault. It was everybody's fault except his.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? We had Louise, and she was a joy. And he came to the hospital, couldn't believe that a woman of 40, that was me, had a baby girl that had got 5 fingers and 5 toes and all her bits and pieces. And he hardly spoke to me for looking into the cradle to make sure that she was okay. So that was Louise.
So did you ever set out to have 5 kids when you were like a young woman? Was it always your plan to have a big family?
No, not my plan at all. I didn't have a plan. You just took what God sent you, and that was I was lucky to have 5 healthy children.
You said to me within the last couple of years, you pointed out to me something that I hadn't really considered, which is how different all 5 of us are. Even though we've had the same mom and dad, the same house, the same schools, many of us, the same input in our young lives, yet we've all turned out to be very distinct individuals. To talk about that for a bit.
I think that happens in every family, and I think it surprises each parent that you are the same food and the same everything. Cormac was not a rebel. He studied. He seemed to know where he was going from primary 1. He was like quiet and did his work and came home and was like pretty good child, apart from projectile vomiting when he was a baby. ruining shoes and everything of me. When the year was up, he got over that and he put on a bit of weight and then he was good. And then Suzanne came along and she was a joy of a baby. She just lay in her pram, she lay in her cot, she woke up, she got fed, she went back to sleep again. Then she woke up and she smiled. Even Brent went in to take videos of her smiling in the dining room. And then she laughed and she got fed and nappy changed. And even at night time, she was like that too, very placid. Suzanne grew up beautifully. She always kept the head down at the work, had beautiful, tidy work when she was at primary school. The writing was perfect. Everything was in the right line. And she would be very cross if she made a mistake or anything. And then when she went to grammar school, she excelled in maths and then went on to get sponsorship to go to the university in Edinburgh, and she became an actuary. I forgot to tell you about Cormac then. We'll go back to Cormac.
Go ahead.
Well, then, anyway, he did chemistry and physics and biology and things like that, subjects like that. And he enjoyed himself, socialised, did all that sort of stuff, whereas Suzanne didn't. And then he got his A-levels and was one of two fellas who got in from St. Malachy's to go to do medicine. The other one was Owen Loughran. And you know about Owen. And then he went to Queen's and did his degree and did a degree in between his degree and really stayed at home that time, all the time that he was at Queen's, lived in a flat for a while, but not a lot of time, length of time and in a flat or across town. And he became a doctor. And then he went on to specialise and be a GP. So is that enough about Cormac and Suzanne?
Enough about Cormac, yeah. Move on to the next one.
The next one was the devil. He was called Gavin Thomas, after my grandfather, the Thomas bit. And the first thing was, there's something wrong with that baby. He always lies on the one side and this cheek is developed and that cheek is flat. Take him to the hospital and find out what's wrong with him. And they more or less said to me, like, catch yourself on. He'll learn to sleep on the other side. He'll not be always flat-faced. And then, his tongue's tied, said one nurse. Oh, my goodness, what a tragedy this was going to be. Take him to the hospital and get his tongue untied. And that was the first day that the West Link was opened and the traffic was as clear as could be. And I got over to Dundonald Hospital and a dermatologist, doctor, whatever, just snipped your tongue and you never stopped talking after that, and entertained us and made funny faces and drew cartoons at school and did things about teachers. And then years later, I heard about Mr. Hill met me and he said, your Gavin is some character. I was teaching him in class when he was in about P4 and I came in looking for my sports bag. And I said, have any of you boys seen my sports bag, my old bag?
Have any of you boys seen my old bag?
My old bag. And you said, please, sir, she's at home looking after the children. And he said he had to turn his back to the class to laugh. And all the boys were going, he's going to get killed. He's going to get killed. Mr. Hill's going to kill him. So, and even in school then, you took part in all the plays and you were in operas, Oliver and various things in Fort William Musical Society. And you were in Arsenic and Old Lace and other dramas that I can't remember all the names of them. And then when you went down to the parents, teachers thing, it was, well, Gavin's a very bright boy, but he doesn't concentrate on this and he doesn't concentrate on that. He's too busy making everybody laugh and entertaining the class. So then Gavin went over to Essex University and did law and became a solicitor, worked in London for a while, didn't fancy London, and then decided to go around the world and see again a bit more of the world, where then he got into divetheworld.com. And the rest is history. He went to live in somewhere beautiful like Kota Kinabalu, met Zati and got married and had Max.
Let's move on to Mark.
Mark was a gorgeous little baby and a gorgeous little boy. And Mark had blonde hair, and it came down right over his face. And he got a part in a play, playing the part of the Milky Bar Kid. There were little bars, I don't know whether Milky Bars still exist or not, I don't think they do, of white chocolate, long white chocolate. And then there was an advert, the Milky Bar Kid, do. I don't know the music words. And he used to play with the dog, Lulu, and cycled around the house and was easy to bring up, very easy to bring up, and very lovable. And anyway, he was at Park Lodge too, and then went to St. Malachy's, got the 11 plus, went to St. Malachy's, and didn't like St. Malachy's, it turns out, in the long run. But he did very well at school and then went on, but didn't do a degree or anything, and is keeping fit and very loving but quiet, doesn't let on that he's loving, but he's very caring of friends who are in need. Mark, when he was at school, was very keen on football, and then when he left, he joined a football team, and then he became a football coach, and he taught in America, loved it over there, mostly the summertime. Sometimes he stayed on for a few months, and then he came back here and he played for Corrymeela. They were the Peace People up in Ballycastle, and that's what it's called after. And he then coached a few teams here as well, junior teams, and got very interested in that. And then he got very interested in languages. He had already Spanish from school and had been to South America a few times, and then took up Portuguese relatively recently. So he finds people to speak to on the internet, maybe meets them then for a cup of coffee, and they exchange languages and make sure that each of them is saying the right thing. So he's planning to go to Brazil, which is very exciting for him. And he's also got the farm down in Cushendall to run. He's single at the moment, and he's very eligible. But if he doesn't get married, that's okay. But I'm happy as long as he is happy, and he is happy. As Mark has no children, he's the favourite go-to uncle. He's the one that the Bradleys, Killian and Isabel and Helen come up and they want to punch him, and he punches back, and there's all this play acting. And then they go out and they play football, and he gets all the little cones out, teaches them how to dribble between the cones, how to catch a ball, throw a ball, do all that you do in soccer. Sorry, I don't think you catch it in soccer. So all the other children love him too. Miles and April, they go with him to anything that he's going to. And Max, when he's over here, will be out footballing with him as soon as he can. And of course, Alistair and Malcolm go out, and he's very gentle with them, but very rough with the Bradleys, which is good because they're older and they can take it, and they're good. Bella plays soccer down in Dublin, and she's his godchild, so maybe there's a connection there.
Okay. Louise?
Well, Louise was, as you can gather, a shock to everybody. And she used to lie in her little cradle at the side beside my chair in the living room. And whenever you all came home from school, you didn't say, hello, Mammy, or look for a bowl of cornflakes or anything. You all came into the house to see the baby and look after the baby and wanted to lift her when she was sleeping and leave her alone. When she's sleeping, leave her alone. So she was always a good baby. And when I used to take her to primary school, we were living in Fort William Drive at that time. So also when Mark was born, we moved into this house, which was my grandfather's and then my parents. And she walked down the road with me to the primary school. And we used to sing the whole way down and swing our hands. And I felt like a granny taking her down because all the other mothers were so young. And she said to me one day, you know, Mammy, the way you're a bit mad. And I said, uh-huh. Well, I like you that way. And then we would sing and skip a bit more. And she talked and talked and talked. And then she got to the corner of the wall and she put her finger on her lips and never spoke, because that's the way they had to go into school. And the teachers all liked her. She was a good pupil, studious but good fun. And then she went to Fort William and played the cello, which was a bit of a nuisance, taking the cello in and out from the car into school. She didn't stick to that too long. But she was loads of friends. Louise would meet people on holiday, and 5 minutes after meeting them, come back up to us, say, my best friend Tracy, or my best friend Emma, or my best friend, some English girl or Scottish girl or German girl that she'd met at the pool, made friends very easily and kept her friends, still does have lots of friends from all sorts of times. Went to university in Manchester to do dentistry. And when she told the teacher in school that she was going to do the careers advisor, what is everybody going to be and why, Louise said she was going to be a dentist because you could have your appointment book filled as much or as little as you liked, and you could have a family and work the family round the appointments. And the teacher said, you're no mug, Louise, you've this well thought out. And I think she got that from me. I said to her, look, that's a great job if you've got all the right subjects and everything. So she was very artistic at school as well. So that helps in like making crowns and making different sizes and shapes of teeth and getting the colour right and everything. So she does a lot of work even with like a paintbrush to make sure everything is perfect. So then she went from Manchester, got her degree there, and then she did an extra degree in Edinburgh where she met Ken. And then now she's doing extra courses to perfect her dentistry, and so they're all my children seem to be happy, thank goodness. That's not really what you asked me.
Yeah, no, that's good. But just talk about a little bit about how we differ and life's rich tapestry and all that, and why that might be, and who's a bit more like this and who's a bit more like that.
Well, the differences are probably each child has got a bit of Brendan and a bit of me in them. Cormac would have mostly Brendan in him, and he would be wouldn't suffer fools too gladly, would expect people to know things and get cross with you if you didn't know them. Like he said to me one day when I ran out of petrol, I would consider it gross inefficiency to run out of petrol. Well, he was about I don't know what age he was. I could have slapped him round the face because of that. But he was interested in things and read, and he was mostly a Macaulay. And I don't quite know what that means, but he was academic, but at the same time could go out and get drunk and come in and be vomiting all over the place and causing mayhem down in Cushendall one night. And trying to get up the steps. And Suzanne came into bed with me crying. Brent was in Belfast working. Came into me crying, he's going to die, Mommy, he's going to die. And she couldn't sleep and had to get into the bed with me and sleep with me all night. I think the pair of us cried most of the night.
This is Cormac when he was about 15, experimenting with booze.
Which most people did, but they didn't do it in front of their mother or annoy them as much as he did. Suzanne would be mostly Macaulay, but a very different type from Cormac. She would always do the right thing. She was very law-abiding. The only funny thing that she said was...
not the only funny thing that she said.
Well, lots of funny things.
Don't say that.
Lots of funny things that she said. But what was it going down in the car one day? She said, oh, yes, she was in the back seat of the car and all of you were fighting. And I said, will you sit down and behave yourself like a Christian? And she started to cry and she says, I don't want to be a Christian. And then down in Cushendall in 1974 at the Ulster Worker Council strike, Mr. Workman was looking after his house, hosing down his house and washing it with a brush and everything. And I looked up and I said, what's going on up there? And she says, don't worry, Mammy. It's only a man shaving his house. So she had lovely little expressions they got, but very kind and thoughtful with other people and wouldn't have fallen out with people. She was, she would have had a friend and be very loyal to that friend. She wouldn't have had as many friends as Louise would have, but she'd be very loyal to those friends. Like Catherine Hassan away from years ago, she'd still be friendly with her. And she would be calm about everything and organised beyond compare with her notebooks about doing homeworks. And she would come home from school and she would make herself a cup of coffee and biscuits or something and up the stairs. And then she would study from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And she would have it all, so much time for geography, so much time for English, so much time for... And then she would come down the stairs and you'd all had your dinner at 6 o'clock. Then she watched Neighbours. And then she went up and she studied again from like 6:45 to 9 o'clock. And again, it was each different subject and time and colour coded and everything. And then she would come down and make herself a hot water bottle or a cup of tea or something like that and go up to bed. And Brent would say, that one's away to bed and she hasn't done any work. And I'd say, Brenton, she has. You have no idea how well organised she is. Whereas the pair of you would be up and down and looking for an excuse to get away from studying, you and Cormac, you more than Cormac. And then you would go up the stairs and I don't know what you were doing, but you were drawing cartoons on corners of papers and probably studied but didn't study with that same intensity and thing. But you would be mostly Macaulay as well, I would think. And always making jokes about things, puns on words, a wordsmith beyond compare. And your father was full of that. Oh, that fellow'll do something with words. And when you did law, he thought, he'll be a barrister. That's what he'll be. And he'll twist the clients around so as they don't know whether they're coming or going. And that's what we assumed you would be doing. But now you're a wordsmith and you're enjoying that. You're having fun with language and meeting people and putting on voices and accents and doing takeoff of people and making funny faces and entertaining, always entertaining. And you've made speeches at Suzanne's wedding, Louisa's wedding, and you just are great at all that. That's always very funny. And anybody who's been to the wedding keeps saying, oh, that Gavin's great and he's great fun. Now, you do your homework on the speeches, but you're able to do them brilliantly.
Well, people, I remember saying to me that at least I think it was Suzanne's wedding, saying, I'm not surprised you're able to talk given who your mother is. So that presumably comes from you.
Well, I was very interested in drama from I was about 4 years of age. I did speech and drama. And I was in all sorts of little plays like The Babes in the Wood in St. Mary's Hall. And I was one of the babes, myself and Anne McManus. She was a boy babe and I was a girl babe. And all the little birds were the chorus and they used to flutter around and put leaves on us and all. Now, that show went on for a full week, in St. Mary's Hall. And then we had to tap dance. I had to learn how to tap dance.
Well, let's stick to the kids here. Let's not go off on a tangent.
Sorry.
I'm just saying, respond again to that, me saying that comes from you.
Yeah, well, that's true. But the proper use of the English language, interest in words would come from Brenton. Whereas the delivery would probably come from me. Brenton was very keen on the use of English. Like you used to discuss words at the kitchen table and you would learn a new word and then you would come home from school and say, the teacher was asking, did anybody know what this word meant? And that we were just talking about that last night, Daddy. So I put my hand up and he was amazed that I knew some big word.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you should move on to Mark now.
Okay. Well,
And Mark is mostly
Mark
what? Go
was
ahead.
gentle, very kind and thoughtful, always like that. And I used to wheel him up to, or take him up to Park Lodge when I was picking you up from school. And he talked to all the other wee kids about the wee babies who were in prams too. And
he always says he's a nickel.
Yes, more. I think he looks more like a nickel. And I think he looks like my daddy. And he was never particularly academic, but he got through. He just got through school easily enough. He never got into any trouble. There was never a teacher's day when they said that's a cheeky fella or anything like that. But it was always, he's a bright boy, but he's not applying himself enough. But he got through school pretty well, and he got through St. Malachy's well, but he didn't, in hindsight, he said he didn't like St. Malachy's because there weren't girls at it.
Talk about what does he get from the Nichols? What does he get from the Macaulays, if you can? Or who's the most nickel?
I think Mark.
And how does that manifest itself?
Well, he's funny when he's telling a story. He gets round to it in a funny way. And my father was great at telling stories. And Mark loves telling you these big, long stories. He's very kind, very thoughtful, quietly does things. The difference between you and Mark would be, I would have asked you to do a job and you would have said, oh yes, wee mumsy wumsy, I'll do that job for you. But you didn't bother yourself. Mark would say, moan and groan. But then he would get up and he would get it done, and he would get it done perfectly.
That's a funny distinction.
You could depend on Mark to do things. You could depend on Mark to do the right thing. And he's very law-abiding. And he's just an all-round good fella, Mark. There's no badness or anything in Mark.
All right, let's move on to Louise. Is she a Macaulay? Is she a nickel?
She's mostly a nickel. And her daddy, Brenton, just adored her, used to take her up to the castle and take videos of her and photographs of her. And he was up at the castle one day, and the groundsman in the castle said, is this your first grandchild? And Brenton didn't have the heart to say anything. He just said, yeah. And he used to take her away to lots of places. And, whenever he retired at 58. So he was able to have time with her, where he didn't have time with the rest of you because he was always working.
Yeah, she had a very different experience of Dad than the rest of us.
Very different. And he was much more tolerant. And I think because he was more tolerant with her, he actually became more tolerant with some of you. There were times when he wasn't tolerant, but...
Yeah, I think she had a closeness with him that maybe the rest of us didn't, because he was much more relaxed by the time she came around.
Well, that was because he was retired and because he was an older father. And I was like that too. I was much more relaxed bringing up Louise. Your first baby, I've said that especially to my daughters-in-law, so that they understand that I wouldn't give a first baby to my worst enemy, because it's the most exhausting and you don't know what you're doing and are you doing the right thing? You've never done it before. You're just back from the hospital and it's just all, suddenly you're the only person in charge. If this baby survives, it's because of you. And if it dies because of you, it's awful. When you have your fifth child, you're just so relaxed, and it doesn't matter what time it gets fed, and it doesn't matter as long as it's clean and fed and happy. And everybody, as I said, came home from school and wanted to play with her. And so she had like 6 parents, I suppose. And everybody had loads of time for her, and everything she did was wonderful. And when she took her first step, it was recorded with claps and walking
Yeah, I
along the
remember it.
carpet and cushioned doll. And everybody thought this was the most wonderful thing.
Yeah, we all did. I definitely feel quite paternal towards Louise because we were all
Yeah.
double digits when she was born, the first three of us.
Yeah.
So her coming into the family was something we could really appreciate.
Yeah. You know what you said whenever I told you that I was having a baby?
What was that?
It was Easter time, and instead of having an Easter egg for all of you, I got one big Easter egg, and I put little notes inside it: a baby for Cormac, a baby for Suzanne, a baby for Gavin, and a baby for Mark. And I tucked it inside and put the paper back on again. And you were all complaining that you weren't getting an Easter egg each. So Brent and I were in bed and cushioned all, and you all came into the room to get at this egg, and you opened it up and you cracked it open, and Cormac was going, oh, he was reading his wee note, a baby for Cormac. Oh, Suzanne got her wee note, a baby for Suzanne. Mark got his, oh, a baby for Mark. And you said, where's my a baby for? And eventually you found your a baby for. And then you looked at us in the bed and you went, you're not. Horrified that we had done what you have to do to get a baby. I think it was just in your mind, oh my God, my old parents do that.
Jeez.
That was the funniest thing. And then you all went screaming around Dalriada, telling everybody, we're getting a baby, we're getting a baby. And by the time we came back from Mass, the whole of Cushendall or Dalriada anyway knew I was pregnant. Frida Gilmore says, are you pregnant? Your kids are running around telling everybody.
And indeed you were. And Louise, people describe Louise's personality as being a lot like yours insofar as she's 100 miles an hour and always got several things on the go.
Yeah.
And that comes from you. You never stopped.
Well, what my problem was, I said yes to everything. If anybody asked me to go anywhere, I said yes. And then I would come in, I would look at the calendar. Oh, I'm supposed to be doing that day. How can I do 3 things in one day? But I tried to do the 3 things in the one day and probably didn't do them properly. Your father used to say that I didn't focus on any one job because I had 2 or 3 jobs going at the same time. And I'm still a bit like that. I can't just start one job and get it finished. Go, oh, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do that. But Louise is like me in many ways, and that would be one of them.